Before I record whatever it is I'm going to record, I think that I should warm up. There now follows the story of Algenon, Coleville, and the flying bicycle. Time upon a once there was a small boy named Algenon Coleville. He lived in a village called Hot Dog in the heart of the country. Algenon was a nice, well-mannered fellow who only played tricks on Grandma when he felt specially boisterous. Father Coleville ran the bicycle shop in the village, while Mother Coleville stayed at home and mothered. She took mothering seriously and did it well, because she knew that motherhood is a wonderful hood. One day at supper, Father Coleville said, "Algernon, my son, you are now 12 years old, and I think it is time that you helped me down at the shop." "Fuffety fuffer," replied Algernon, which is the way the words "certainly, father" sounded when he said them with his mouth stuffed full of food, which it was at that particular moment. He swallowed and repeated the remark properly. "All right, then," said Father Coleville. "There is no time like the present, and I would like you to come down to the shop for about an hour after school today." So that afternoon Algernon went to the shop as his father had asked. "Here I am, father," he said. This remark was unnecessary, really, because Algernon was quite large for his age, and he was wearing a bright red shirt anyway. Father Coleville turned to him. "Algernon, I have just mended the brakes on this bicycle. Take it outside, will you, and ride it around a bit to see that they are all right." Algernon took the bicycle outside and started to ride it down Main Street. He said later that he wasn't quite sure when, but all of a sudden he felt a strange, unusual sensation come over him. It was as if the bicycle were taking him for a ride and not the other way around. And then it happened. The bicycle quickened, and suddenly, before Algernon could apply the brakes his father had repaired, the bicycle with Algernon in the saddle had left the ground. In the time it takes to say, "Holy mackerel there!" he was 50 feet up and climbing, before you could toss in, "For heaven's sake, well, what do you know?" He had soared to 100, skimming Farmer Carter's poplar tree and scraping the top of the church steeple. Was Algernon scared? You bet your itchy cotton socks he was. But Algernon was a brave lad, and having got over his first fright, he began to enjoy himself. It really was a jolly thing to be able to soar through the air like a seagull, and what is more, he found he could control the bicycle quite well. He could make it go up by leaning backwards, and down by pushing forward on the handlebars. A lean to the left, and he turned in that direction. Likewise, he could turn to the right. The bicycle flew on its own, at a steady speed, and Algernon had only to pedal in reverse to make it slow down. Yes, it was all rather exciting and good, clean fun. But Algernon's happiness was disturbed by a strange sound, a hum, like a swarm of bees. Looking down, he saw where it came from. There, in the village square, were hundreds of the inhabitants of Hot Dog, staring up and shouting things like, "Come down, you stupid boy!" and "Whoever saw a child flying on a bicycle?" While Mrs. Clambake, the baker's wife, was yelling, "Well, I never did," which, if she meant go flying on a bicycle, was perfectly true. In the centre of the crowd Algernon saw a familiar figure. There stood his father, his clenched fists waving in the air, his face the colour of a beet. "Come down at once!" he cried. Now Algenon was an obedient boy, and immediately he leaned forward to descend, and pedalled backwards at the same time to reduce his speed. A lean to the left, and a couple of leans to the right to avoid the chimney of the brick factory, he soon found himself making a perfect landing just outside the edge of the crowd. His father was the first to reach him. He was very angry. "Leave the bicycle here. Go home at once and stay in your room." Algenon did as he was told. That night at supper, Father Coleville gave Algenon a thorough talking to. He told him that riding a bicycle along the sky was no way to behave. It had caused a great fuss, a bother, and a to-do in the village, he said. 3 people had fainted, 2 had had fits, and old Mrs. Bismuth had leaned too far backward looking up at the sky that she fell over a barrel of apples and sent the contents spilling all the way down Flat Hill to the bottom. Father Colville put down his knife and fork, and staring angrily at Algenon said, "What you did today was shameful, and has brought disgrace and illumination on the family." He meant to say humiliation, but his dentures got stuck when he started to say it. "Algenon, you must promise me that you will never do such a thing again." His father looked so fierce that Algenon replied, Oh, no, father, I won't." His mother had said nothing during the meal, and smiled in a sickly sort of way, because she had a stomachache from indigestion. The next day after school, Algenon again went to his father's bicycle shop, as he had been told to do. "Just test this bicycle I have mended, and see that it is all right," said his father, and added, "And don't you do you know what." Algenon rode the bicycle down Main Street, as he had done before, and can you guess what happened? Once again that strange, unusual feeling, and once again the bicycle, with Algenon in the saddle, slowly climbed skyward. This time he joined a flock of bar-tailed godwits, who wanted him to go with them on their migration to Mexico. He was considering their invitation when, attracted by the noise, he looked down to see the villagers shouting at him as they had before. He could distinctly hear the words of the Chinese laundryman. Algenon couldn't understand what he was saying, but he knew it wasn't nice. Algenon started down, and eventually he landed safely. Seeing his father running towards him, he decided, from the expression on his face, that it would be best to run the other way. In almost as long as it takes to say, "I'm in for a licking," he arrived home. He told his mother exactly what had happened, explaining that he couldn't possibly have helped soaring into the sky, as it was entirely the fault of the bicycle. Although he was beginning to think that maybe there might be something about himself that made bicycles do this. His mother looked at him kindly. Her smile was no longer sickly, because she had done some lovely loud burps and got rid of her indigestion. At supper time that night, Father came into the dining room, with his eyes nearly popping out of his head, and his face looking as if it were going to burst. Quickly Mother said, "Now, Father, 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 Father." She always said this whenever she knew he was very angry. "I have been talking to Algenon, and he has explained to me that he couldn't possibly help what happened." Then she added, with a wise look on her dear, sweet face, "I have been thinking." The circus is coming to town in just 2 days, and I am quite certain that they would be interested in a boy who could fly a bicycle through the air. They might very well make Algenon one of their star performers." Father stroked his chin thoughtfully. He forgot his anger and agreed that this was a very good and a very clever idea. So when the circus arrived and the tent was put up, all three walked down and asked to see the ringmaster. They were introduced to a large, grand-looking man smoking a fat cigar, dressed in a fine blue velvet costume, carrying a long whip with black whiskers which drooped down past his chin.
"And what can I do for you?"
he said. "Our boy Algenon can ride a bicycle through the air," replied Father. The ringmaster thought this was very, very funny.
Whoever heard of a boy riding a bicycle through the air?
And he laughed so much that he swallowed his lighted cigar. When he had recovered, Father said, "I know it is difficult to believe, but I think that at least you should get Algenon the opportunity, polymubric and grand slop notwithstanding." He always used words like this when he wished to impress somebody. He had no idea what they meant, for he made them up as he went along. So they all went down to the big top, and the ringmaster borrowed a bicycle belonging to one of the clowns, named Fatso, who was very thin. Everyone was silent and expectable as Algenon got into the saddle. As Algenon, his father and mother knew what happened, but the ringmaster didn't. The bicycle and Algenon, after a short run, rose swiftly into the air. The ringmaster was dumbfounded, and he began to shout in his native language. He was born in Slobovia.
"Guchnik balhagen digli digli gugli guputli kachunku, hotlik bangaga, hukamonya kukal lakapuf."
In English, this is translated into, "Well, cut my legs off and call me Shorty." Slowly Algenon circled inside the tent, climbing and diving and all the time shouting, "Yippee! Yippee!" because now he could enjoy his flight without his father getting angry. And because he was so happy, he felt like showing off, and he looped the loop twice. When at last Algenon came down, the ringmaster hugged him and said, my boy, you must join the circus, and you shall be the star of the show." And so it was. For lots of lovely spending money and all the hamburgers, French fries, and popcorn he could eat, Algenon rode his bicycle inside the big top every evening and twice on Saturdays, while the crowd in the audience clapped and cheered till their hands were sore and they could clap and cheer no more. And so ends my story of Algenon's success and the flying bicycle.